Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. On behalf of NorCal Services for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, I'd like to thank you for joining us for our parent support group. My name is Kristen Stratton, and I'm one of the parent consultants with NorCal. And I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker today, Vicky Iqueda. And Vicky is coming to us as the parent of a teenage young man who is deafblind and has Charge syndrome. And she works closely with California DeafBlind Services, as well as a number of local organizations involving special education in her area. And she's going to be telling us about her parent journey with her son, as well as what she's been able to learn over the last several years and share that wisdom with us today. And one more thing I want to mention is we have Spanish language interpreting available. We also have English closed captioning, and we have American Sign Language interpreting. If you need to listen to a alternative language like the Spanish interpreter, you're going to click on the interpretation icon, which is shaped like a globe at the bottom of your screen, and select your preferred language. All right, without further ado, here's Vicky. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, thanks Kristen for the introduction. As Kristen mentioned, my name is Vicky Iqueda, and I am very thankful for this opportunity to share our story with our oldest son, AJ. And just trying to locate where the slides are. One second. Thank you. So this is my son, AJ, right here. He has Charge syndrome. He is deafblind. He has a few different disabilities. Let's go to the next slide. So just a little bit about myself. I'm Mexican American. I am first generation here in the United States to have an opportunity to go to college and start my family here. Very actively at a very young age. I would visit back and forth for about 17 summers. And I worked in a little ranch back in Mexico, helping on a dairy farm. So I know a little bit about not milking cows, but about making cheese. So just a fun fact about who I am and what I've done growing up. I'm a youth leader in a church here in the Inland Empire. I typically do English and Spanish interpreting there as well, simultaneously when the message is happening. So I get to see a lot of people come in and out, different needs of people that come into our church as well. And currently I'm working with the Community Advisory Committee as the president of the SELPA team, just advocating for kids in general in our area, in our county, for deaf, not just deaf and hard of hearing kids, but kids with any type of disability. I'm blessed to also be a family support provider with California DeafBlind Services. They were kind of a lifesaver for me about, I would say my son was about 3 years old when I finally got the opportunity to meet them, and they've helped me through the process of raising AJ with deafblindness, understanding deafblindness a bit better, and also helping my son in our local area in his school district. So my son, as I mentioned, is AJ. He is a teenager. I never thought I'd have a teenager, just because with Charge, there are many different needs, medical needs. So I'm blessed that he's still with us. He's at school today. He was very ill for the last 2 weeks, came off oxygen yesterday, and he hit the floor running, having a great time at school. So I'm so blessed that he's there. I'm also the parent of 5-year-old twin boys that are hearing and that are a handful. Later on, I'll share a little bit about AJ's journey with hearing aids, bone conductive hearing aids. But I just want to throw out the thought that I think he stopped wanting to be aided because of these twin boys. They are too loud for him. We'll go to the next slide. I just want to share who my family is. This is my husband, George. This is part of our Christmas pictures, and that's AJ, the tallest of them all, the twin boys. And I picked this picture to share with you guys because AJ literally hugs them, is always wanting to give them a neck embracement. So they are very close to each other, although they are very different in age. And there we are at our favorite place, which is Disneyland. All the kids wanted to take a selfie. And it started with AJ, him grabbing my phone and bringing it up to him. And one of the twins, every ride or anywhere they go, he is constantly hugging AJ. So this is my little family. Just wanted to introduce them to them. And let's go into the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about how I met my husband. I think it's important for people to understand where we come from and what determines who we are later on in life. But my husband and I met online. I don't know who was familiar with American online, You've Got Mail. I did not meet him because I wanted to date anybody. I met him because I was interested in sports. I worked for a company that was primarily men in my area, and they were always talking sports, and I didn't know what was going on. And it was primarily baseball. And so that's where I met him. We became friends really quickly. That first picture that we took, we determined we had a love for Disneyland, and we were truly just friends for, I would say, a little over a year. Then we got married in 2006, and we thought it was really funny to retake a picture at SeaWorld. The right bottom picture is the first picture we ever took together, and that's exactly how we were standing. So just wanted to share a little bit about how we met. Definitely when we met, and we'll go to the next slide. When we met, we were just friends. And then once we decided we wanted to start a relationship together, we were very clear on what our dreams as a family would be. So if we can go to the next slide, I would really appreciate that. We had clear dreams of our family. We had a desire to travel. George hadn't traveled as much as I had, and he wanted to do that with his family. He had specific dreams about what he wanted for when he had a son. And one of those biggest dreams for him was he wanted a son that would be interested in pro baseball. George had attended some draft meets, and he hurt his arm when they were trying to convert him into a pitcher. He used to be a shortstop. And so he wanted that opportunity for his child to fulfill a dream that he had. And I'm sharing that specific point because later on, you'll see what is one of AJ's most things that he likes to do. He also had dreams for AJ to be very career driven and to be in a position where he can make a difference in other people's lives. My dreams for him were, I just wanted to have mommy and me time, a mommy and me life. I actually had my route planned out. I live in the Inland Empire and I used to work in Orange County. So I even had what my commute was going to be. I had a daycare picked out for him, where I was going to put, gas, coming back, what route we would take to church for Bible study. Sports, we wanted to continue. In my thoughts, we were going to continue joining dad at softball because he used to play softball with a group of coworkers. And so I just, I had a dream of a happy life with no problems, had no idea of any types of disabilities, had not had a family member with any medical needs. And so when AJ was born, it was a whole different eye-opening life that came to us. So the unexpected happened. And in the next slide, we see a picture of AJ. In this picture, AJ was about 6 days old, pardon me. In the next slide. And this is our deaf son, AJ, who was born in 2008 with Chart syndrome. And we're gonna play a quick little video about AJ.
Hi, everybody. It's Adam with HeartValveSurgery.com. Today, we're at Lake Elsinore, California, for two special teams from the Make-A-Wish Foundation and Edwards Life Sciences have come together to grant a special wish to Abraham Jordan, also known as AJ.
What people can learn from AJ is that he's a little kid just like any other. We just have some special circumstances. AJ was born at 37 weeks. He was born via emergency C-section. He was immediately intubated. We were then told that his aortic valve was dented. He had what's called the cleft mitral valve. It could stop moving. It could stop working. AJ has had very open heart surgery. After every heart surgery, there's always been what I've been told from his cardiothoracic surgeon. We don't know what his heart will allow us to do. Just prepare yourself for the worst.
Born, he was supposed to be only a couple of days, and doctors say he will never walk, he will never eat with mouth. He has surprised me a lot. The warrior, he's a fighter.
He then needed other procedures that came along with Chart syndrome. I have dreams and I have hopes for AJ. He was told he'd never sit up, never stand. He's now walking. We've been told he'll never hear. There's obviously an awareness for sound. So I hope that he can learn communication and speech. I hope that he can be integrated into our society and accepted, and that he can do something for others in his own condition.
Recreation. Yes, Marion's public health. Much better.
To make conversation, and they said that give AJ the wish of having a play set in our We are in Lake Elsinore today to make a wish come true for a heart valve patient, a little one. About 10 volunteers from Edwards Life Sciences coming out, and we're building a playhouse, and that's his wish. I'm just blessed by Edwards Life Sciences having their own people be involved, creating a playset for my son, which is one of the wishes he's had that he will enjoy. It's incredible to know that it's them because they specialize in heart valves.
It was great to have these people, they're volunteering. They could have been doing something else, especially with the holidays coming up. It makes me want to volunteer too. It makes me happy because it's for my son.
Thank you. Science. We'd like to get back.
AJ's wish for his playground is definitely coming true. He was out in our backyard earlier, already trying to get into the playset, even though it wasn't built yet.
Playground's almost done, and just seeing AJ on it and coming down the slide and smiling and wanting to go back up. That was it. It was just all this work just paid for right there.
Each wish for education is a specialist wish. Got to look in their eyes and the eyes of their parents to understand
it was super satisfying. I saw him come out when we were about halfway done. I'm like, oh, almost there. So we put up the swings, and then he just kept on the swings, and we could tell he was loving it. And then now that we finally got it done, you can see now crawling up the stairs, going down the slide. I think it's tough to pull him off of it, and he's having a great time.
It's one thing that I tell people today, is get involved. So little goes such a long way in impacting people's lives.
I feel so lucky to be an Edwards employee and to oversee global philanthropy for a company that has an amazing heart. When we say we're passionate about helping patients, it's because we really, really care. It's at the core of who we are. And if you ask employees all across the company, all across the world, they will say the same thing, and it comes from deep within. It's an amazing culture.
To the employees at Edward Life Sciences, I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for making my son's wish come true. Thank you for building products that keep heart patients alive. And thank you so much for just working so diligently in what you do. And if you want, we can build a little bell for a little AJ. Thank you.
So this is a quick story about my son, AJ. AJ was born on August 20th, 2008, via emergency C-section. We had no indication prior or even during pregnancy that we were going to have a kid with special needs, any medical needs. Nothing was present through my care as I was pregnant. I took myself to the hospital that day after leaving the doctor's appointment. I had a gut feeling something was wrong. I had left the doctor's office and he assured everything was fine. But my mommy gut just said, something's not right. Something's not right. And I ended up not leaving the hospital. Apparently I was having contractions about 2 minutes apart. I didn't feel anything. I felt no pain. This was probably one of the easiest pregnancies for me. It was one of the pain-free, not feeling contractions after knowing what contractions are with the twins years later. I was very blessed without feeling any contractions, but AJ was definitely coming. He was going to be born. He had some respiratory issues happening. His heart was dropping, and we were just blessed to be able to go to the hospital, just trust my mommy gut instinct that something was going on, even though I felt nothing. And he was born. AJ had some complications breathing. Later, I saw a picture of my husband in the nursery where he had been intubated. He had been called to the nursery. I didn't know what those tubes were at that time when I saw that picture. Later on down the road, I ended up understanding what had happened. AJ began his NICU life with some feeding difficulties. He had problems with suck, swallow, and breathe at the same time, but nothing was abnormal about him. He was a pink baby. Most kids that are born with congenital heart disease, they don't look as pink as AJ did. There was no indications that nothing else was happening, but on day 3 of his NICU life, AJ became very ill with an unexpected heart complication. And AJ was being prepared to be transferred to a children's hospital about an hour away, and he was then cared at a cardiac ICU unit. Day 3 was probably one of the hardest days of our life because we had doctors coming in and telling us that they don't exactly know what was going on, but his aortic valve was closing where it shouldn't be closing. It was dented, and they started telling me all this verbiage about cardiac issues that I had no clue what they meant. There was no indication of Charge syndrome when AJ was born. but there was something going on with his heart. We had a transport team come and pick up AJ. It kind of felt like the Marines had walked into the NICU when I was there with AJ, because it was all these gentlemen dressed in navy blue, and they just came in just charging forward, ready to do what they had to do. And it was very surreal. I had an administrator from the NICU just letting us know that they didn't know what the transport team would do, but they wanted to take pictures of us with AJ. They wanted to take his footprints, his handprints, so that we would have memories of our little boy in case he did not make it through the night. The team from Loma Linda, one of them was a cardiac physician, and he just assured me that they would be taking the best care of him. So AJ's now not in a NICU, but now he's at a children's hospital in Loma Linda, and he's in a cardiac unit. And on day 7 of his life, AJ was stable enough from a heart perspective. We knew he had VSD and ASD, a cleft mitral valve, and a dented aortic valve that had not shut, thank God. So he did not need surgery quite yet. They wanted him to get a little more chunky, see him outpatient. But on day 7, obviously, before he got discharged, the hospital was going to be conducting a newborn hearing test, a screening, to see if there was anything wrong with AJ's hearing. And even though AJ had some feeding difficulties, he would be able to come home with us. Well, our feeding issues we would discuss later, but before we left the hospital, we were told that AJ could not hear. He had a pretty severe hearing loss. And that was a big shocker for us. To that time, we had not known anybody who was deaf or hard of hearing, other than, 90-year-old grandma who couldn't hear very well. But we did not know any other people in our community that could not hear. So going to the next slide, AJ, by the time he was discharged from the hospital, he was diagnosed with congenital heart disease and deafness. And we'll skip 2 slides, please. Life after discharge for AJ was a little difficult. Hearing the words, and it'll be the next slide, please. Hearing the words that he was ready to be discharged and he was stable, that kind of put me in denial about his cardiac issues. He looked nice and pink to me. It'll be the next slide, please. He looked nice and pink for me. He was a happy newborn baby. We struggled a lot with eating. His cries kind of sounded like a little kitty cat. I did not understand at the time that he couldn't even cry very well because of his heart issues. He was constantly sweating, and because he was born in August, I thought that was normal. The air conditioning must not be working properly, but he was constantly drenched in sweat, and I wasn't comprehending that it was because of his heart. It wasn't until I started doing some research, because it felt like the first couple of weeks that we had doctor's appointments, we had one bad or negative medical report after another. AJ was not diagnosed but charged early on, so we had no idea that we should be expecting other medical complications. If we can go to the next slide, please. Life was already hard having a newborn, but it was harder just knowing that we were having doctor's appointments not every 2 weeks, twice a week for like the first couple of months. By the time AJ was 3 years old, he had 17 surgeries already. He had 12 surgery plus surgeries already. He had had 3 open heart surgeries. They had repaired the ASD, the VSD, the cleft mitral valve, and had done a resection of his aortic valve. They had also placed a pacemaker on AJ when he was 3 years old because the electrical component of his heart was not functioning. AJ probably had about 25 hospitalizations going in through the emergency room for breathing complications. It felt like AJ was in the hospital about 3 weeks out of each month, the first year and a half on its own. We were very familiar with the cardiac unit, all the staff, they knew us very well. That's how much we were in and out of the hospital. One of the hardest things for me was not that AJ had heart complications or had breathing complications, or that I struggled to feed him so much. One of the hardest things for me was that I couldn't comfort my baby verbally. As I mentioned before, I had no family members that were deaf or hard of hearing. So I did not know any other language other than Spanish or English. It was very hard for me to, after I found out he was deaf, to speak to him. Because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to say it other than I would put my my baby's head on my throat. And when I would speak to him, I thought maybe he can feel the vibration of my voice. I stopped reading books to him because he couldn't hear me. I stopped playing music like I used to when he was in my belly. It was very hard for me to comprehend, how can I soothe my baby if I can't do it verbally? And the reason I say that it was really hard for me is AJ had been in and out of the hospital so much that touch was not easy for him. I remember having the first reaction out of AJ towards myself, him showing me love, appreciation, him noticing me as a mom for the first time. He was about 8 months old. I was there for him every minute of the day. I held him constantly, but he didn't like to be held forward. So how could he read my lips, or how could I even sign to him? He always wanted to be facing outward. And I just thought to myself, he had a hard time with being in and out of the hospital, a lot of pokes, surgeries, different people being around him. So I thought that was normal until he was 8 months old and he looked at me and he hugged me and he embraced me. And that was like the best day of our life. Sorry that I got a little emotional there. I think it was about at that time that I realized I needed to learn another language. I needed to be proficient, not just in his cardiac history and what to do, but I needed to learn how to communicate with my son. But if we go to the next slide, I want to share about a phone call that I got less than a month after, about a month after discharge. And in this call, I heard from a mother, and that'll be in the next slide. I heard from a mother who I am assuming was like a parent support volunteer person. And this mother called me and said, you know, my name is so-and-so. I was given your contact information. It is my understanding that you have a son who was diagnosed with a hearing loss. I just want to share with you my story. Do you have a few minutes? And sure, I needed to know what was going on. I had no idea what being the mother of a deaf son was. And I was experiencing a lot of grief. I was very sad that my son couldn't hear me. And I thought that was so weird that I wasn't too concerned about his cardiac and lung issues. I was more concerned about my son can't hear me. What is life going to look like for him? What's the future going to be like? What is communication going to look like? And this mother shared with me that she had a very successful, I believe he was 32 years old, if I correctly remember, son who had had an education, who had found a wife who was also deaf, who had 2 beautiful little girls. And even though her son was very successful and was doing well and had means to communicate via sign language, she still had a hard time at his 32 years of age with grief. That there was times that she would still stop and grieve the fact that she could not speak to her son verbally in a way that he could hear her, and that she would never know what speech sounded coming from her son. And even her grandbabies. She shared a story about being at a store, I believe it was Target, and how her grandbabies were running, her 2 little granddaughters, and they were gonna almost bump into a shopping cart. And she remembers not being to scream across the aisle for them to stop, and saying that she had to run and stop them, catch their attention first and stop them. So she shared with me that grief was still there and that grief was normal. And so that kind of helped me hearing her story, that what I was feeling was something that other parents have experienced. So it was so good to be able to connect with a total stranger and know that it was okay. And at the same time, this mother gave me hope. She gave me hope by sharing the story of her adult son forming a family, her family embracing the deaf culture, learning ASL. And that's one of the things that stuck to me. Grief is normal. There's hope for the future. And you need to learn a new language. Regardless of what the hearing loss is, you need to learn a new language. And that's what I took from our conversation. In the next slide, I want to share just quickly a little bit about Charge syndrome. As I mentioned, we did not know that AJ had Charge syndrome at birth. We actually didn't find out he had Charge syndrome until he was a little older. And if anybody is familiar with Charge is a genetic syndrome with patterns of certain features. And some children have also a correlation with the genetic mutation of the CHD7 that is prevalence in Charge syndrome. And there is about 1 in 10,000, and statistics have gone up a bit, 1 in 15,000 children are born with Charge syndrome. And in our case, AJ has colobomas in the optic and the retina portion of his eye. So it affects his central vision. He has access to peripheral vision that also has some severe stigmatism. AJ has chosen not to wear glasses as much as I've tried to have him wear them. But I can only imagine that because his peripheral vision is the strongest, just having the glass frame would be affecting his accessibility to see peripherally. AJ has major, still till this day, heart defects. He still has a dented aortic valve. After 2 resections, his aortic valve does not function very well. He is literally a walking miracle. He also now has a reoccurrence of a cleft mitral valve. And he is actually on his second pacemaker. His second pacemaker got implanted in 2019. AJ does not have issues with the passage of his airway on his nose component. Nothing is visually indicating Charge syndrome for him, but he does have the mutation of the CHD7. So he does have Charge syndrome, and he does have a floppy airway, a lot of secretions in the back of his throat. He does have some restriction of growth. He is a very small 15-year-old, very petite. He is not light at all. He's very bone strong and heavy, but and we keep him as chunky as possible, because if he needs another surgery of whatsoever, the doctors have always indicated, get some meat on this kid. So AJ, with his growth, he does depend on a G-tube for his nutrition and his water intake. He does eat certain things by mouth and enjoys food by mouth, but it is not enough for him to continue to grow. So he has a G-tube. AJ had some urinary issues early on that were taken care of. And with the ears, AJ's ears are a little on the smaller end, but nothing visually or aesthetically points out Chart syndrome, other than he has a bone conductive hearing loss, a mixed bone conductive hearing loss. And going into the next page. So due to Chart syndrome, AJ was born with various medical complications that started arising slowly. They did not come all at once when he was born. AJ was officially diagnosed with Chart syndrome near the age of 2.5 years old. Every time we had a genetics appointment, AJ was in the hospital, and the geneticist would not come and see him in the hospital. It was until I believe he was about 1 year old that I was doing research trying to find out what is wrong with my son. He has all these negative things always popping up. He has, breathing issues. He has hearing loss. He has cardiac issues. He has, we were told very early on he would not sit up. He would not stand. There's no way he would walk. And due to that, I started researching, and I found Chart syndrome online one day, and he was 1 year old, and I kept on pressing. We had an amazing cardiologist, and we were in the hospital again, and I called our cardiologist and I said, look, he's going to miss this genetic appointment again. Can't the geneticist just order a blood test? Can you help me? And I had to call the cardiologist because AJ would always end up in a cardiac unit. Where they were specialized to work with him and his heart conditions. Even for a minor cold, he would always end up in the cardiac unit. So I don't know what this doctor did. I don't know what made me get through him this time, but we were able to have the geneticist come across the street to the hospital and see AJ and order the blood test. That was almost about 2 years old. And then the wait time just to be able to get into the geneticist was very long. So therefore, we received a very late diagnosis for AJ with Chart. Apart from fighting for his life constantly, AJ had to overcome communication challenges associated with being deafblind. We didn't find out about AJ's visual situation until he was almost 3 years old. Because once he got the Chart diagnosis, and we were able to see not just an optometrist, but an ophthalmologist. So it made sense why AJ had issues with touch. Me being able to get close to him, I wanted to pick him up like nothing. And I had to retrain myself that I needed to tap him, let him know that I was coming, waving, getting in his face before I approached him. So I always would tell myself, if AJ could just hear me, that I was coming, that I was getting close, then it would make it easier. So I was still grieving his hearing loss on and off, but we were so caught up with all these medical situations and all these doctor's appointments that my learning process with ASL was coming a little slow, because also by the time AJ was a few months old, he was no longer being visited by the school district. Usually when a child is deaf, the school district works with a family with early intervention. But he was shortly connected with Inland Regional Center because of all his mobility issues and all his medical complications. So we weren't meeting AJ's communication needs early on as we could have, due to other medical issues. Deaf blindness affects AJ's receptive and expressive language. And in the next slide, I just want to quickly share about deaf blindness. Deaf blindness refers to a combination of hearing loss and vision loss. It can be defined as ability of access to visual and auditory information about people and things in their surroundings. So once I understood that my son was having a hard time having access to not just things auditorily, but also visually, it helped me grow a better bond with him and how to communicate with him so that he can receive information that he needed. In most cases of deaf blindness, there is occurrence around the time that the child is born due to complications of being premature syndromes or disorders. We did not know he was deafblind early on. I think if he would have gotten a charged diagnosis earlier on, then we could have noticed or understood that he had visual accessibility deficit as well. And it's very important to know that most kids that are deafblind also, they have other, typically about 90% of them have other additional disabilities. Some of heart problems, about 75% have 2 or more heart problems, and about 50% of our children with deaf blindness have 3 or more complications with their health. Deaf blindness can also lead to developmental delays in areas of language, communication, social skills, mobility, but they do not necessarily limit the child's ability or the person's ability to learn. It just looks very different than it would for a person who's hearing and a person who is able to see. In the next slide, one of the things I want to share, one of the things that finally kind of like it sunk in for me to understand deaf blindness when AJ was about 3 years old was these pyramids, the typical learner and how they learn information versus the deaf-blind learner. And I don't know if you knew, but these are some statistics that caught my eye early on. 95% of all learners, of all learning is through distance senses, meaning 95% of everything we learn comes incidentally for a person that can hear and a person that can see. Speaking to one of my son's interpreters, she shared with me how she worked with a little girl a few years back, a 12-year-old little girl who was deaf, had no other medical complications or any other disabilities other than deafness, but that due to the fact that she was not learning things incidentally like a hearing person, she was delayed in certain areas. And she had to learn very quickly, this interpreter, not just to be an interpreter, but also to show and teach her student about the incidental learning things that were happening around her. And the way she described it to me, she said, you know, this little girl believed for 12 years that food would just appear on the table. And that was because she never heard a refrigerator being opened or being shut. She never heard her mom moving the pots and pans on the stove or washing them. She never heard her mom washing vegetables, opening vegetables out of plastic bags. And that really sunk into me. AJ was about 3 years old when it really sunk in that if I was not directly teaching my child these things, my child would not have any knowledge about where food came from. AJ now gets up when he's hungry. He goes straight to the refrigerator and he starts looking for his refried beans, his rice pudding, his mashed potatoes, his strawberry banana yogurt. He is now able to do these things because I had to teach him where food came from. Food just doesn't appear on the table like this 12-year-old little girl thought. 80% of learning is through vision, and 90% of the learning is incidental. So I know that all of you parents here, if you're here, it's because you have a child who is DeafPlus. But it's so crucial that we directly teach our children what's happening in the environment, and that we do not assume that they know what's happening around them. I have 2 little boys that are hearing, and I have to stop myself and explain things differently for AJ, because I notice now that I have hearing kids, how quickly hearing kids actually pick up on incidental things that are happening. And it's kind of an eye opener to say, okay, AJ's 15, I have 5-year-old twins, but there's certain things that I did not take the time to teach AJ because of his medical extensity when he was young. And I'm reteaching them now, showing them now, so that AJ also is aware of those things. Cake just doesn't appear on the table. Let's go through the process of how we make a cake. Let's go through the process of how it is that we're going to blend your G2 feedings so that you can eat the pancakes that we make, the banana pancakes that we make for breakfast that you can't eat by mouth. Let's blend them and let's put them through your G-tube. And he is now able to follow those steps and understand where things go, to the fact that he goes straight to the refrigerator when he's hungry. He doesn't go pick up a syringe. He doesn't go pick up his formula bag. He goes directly to the refrigerator where he knows the food is at. He'll go straight to the pantry if he wants a cookie. These are things that I had to teach AJ. So if you have little ones that are deafblind, teach them where things are. They have a capability to learn. And remember that 90% of all incidental learning for a person, 90% of everything a person learns, for a person that can hear and a person that can see, 90% of all of that is incidental learning. And if you flip the pyramid around, it's the opposite. Instead of us having to only teach 10% directly to a person that is hearing or has visual access, for a person who is deafblind, it's the opposite. 10% is all the incidental learning they're learning, and 90% is everything we need to teach them directly. So if there's anything you take from this, take the part where you need to work with your loved one, with your child directly on every single little task, as small as it can seem to you, because they can learn that task. You know, they can learn like anybody else. We just have to teach them a little bit different. The next slide is on communication and language access. It is so crucial for our kids that are deafblind that we establish a communication system. Why a system? Expressive and receptive language may not match. My son AJ, although he has significant vision problems, an impairment of vision of access, he can actually follow ASL, especially if it's within 2 feet in front of him. Farther than that, I'm not sure he's grasping it all, but if it's 2 feet in front of him, he can understand ASL. He does not, he's not a receptive ASL person. He needs other modalities to express himself. But if I try to just say, without signing to him, come on, AJ, let's go, it's time for school, he's not going to get off the table. He's not going to get off the chair. He's not going to, go through the motions of getting ready for school. He's not going to do anything. I have to sign, AJ, today is Thursday. Today is a school day. Let's get ready. Let's put on our clothes. And I have to sign everything for him to know what's going on and for him to want to do these things. So AJ's system is ASL when it is receiving information, but when it's expressing the language, he needs adaptive signs, he gestures, he makes himself known, but it is not the same for him. He's not an ASL expressive speaker. Communication access may or may not include assistive technologies. It just depends on the child's needs. But one of the things that I'm still working right now is making sure at 15 years old, I'm still having to work on making sure that the system of communication that we're using with AJ is able to be accessible to him. It's able to be portable for him, and it allows him to communicate what his needs and wants are. Once you have established the system, you must continuously work on it to remove and expand where necessary, reevaluate it, and ensure that it meets the child's needs and wants. And I never thought that at 15, I would be still trying to figure out what is the mode for him to express himself. He expresses himself very clearly, but it's not always in a manner where everyone understands him. But one thing we have down, AJ needs ASL in everything that he does. Going to the next slide, tools that are used by deafblind individuals. Some of these items, AJ has used an object communication system for many years, on and off. When AJ started using hearing aids, he was 6 months old. We were told he needed hearing aids, and this mama made sure he got hearing aids right away. At 3 years old, I understood a bit more about reading a test result when it came to AJ's hearing, and I understood that hearing aids were not doing nothing for him. So I had to find what would work for him, and in his case, it was bone conductive hearing aids. But we've used a communication object system with him. We've used images for AJ. PECs don't work, but for some people that are deafblind, PECs can work. For AJ, it's a very abstract thing. Some individuals use Braille keyboards. They use different modes of communication systems. Many of them use body gestures. Many of them use interveners to access their environment, which is the one thing that every parent wants for their child is an intervener, a person that can interpret and help their student be able, or their child to be able to understand the environment and the community around them. AJ at times uses a white cane when walking on campus. But primarily when we're out in the community and I'm with him and the 3 kids, if I'm all by myself with 3 kids, AJ depends on a wheelchair to transport around areas just for his safety and keeping the other kids safe. But these are some of the tools that deafblind individuals use. Going into the next page, it is very important, and I'm sure you guys know this, that advocating for communication for our deaf individuals is a must. Even more so too for our DeafPlus individuals. Know what ADA looks like and how it helps your children access communication, not just at doctor's office, not just at school, but in public areas. I have this picture of these are like AJ's dream interpreters at Disneyland. AJ has now built a relationship with these 2 individuals. Casey, there's a picture of AJ and Casey where she's signing so close up to him. She's built a relationship with AJ at the theme park. We were on a little boat ride and she sat next to him and she signed just specifically to him. There was another family across from us who was also deaf, and there's another interpreter signing to them. The reason I put this picture in here is because I was not aware of what is actually out there in our community for our kids. And if it's not available as if there's no communication to language available, then we can request it. We can request it. And if we request it on time, with time, and we remind them and we stay on top of it, then our children and our family members who are deaf will have access in the community. What a small world. AJ, let's go to the next page, but AJ is now working with Casey at PT, OT, and speech. And we met her at Disneyland. I didn't remember her. She obviously remembered AJ. She remembers getting up close to him and signing with him up close because she noticed there was other disabilities going on. And and visual accessibility was key for him. And now here we are, and she's been working with AJ for about the last year at a therapy place, providing access and interpreting information for him with occupational therapy, with speech therapy, and with physical therapy. It is very important that as we know the law, we are able to advocate for our kids in the medical realm. If you don't request an ASL interpreter for your children in a medical facility, or when they're in the emergency room, or when you have a doctor's office, please start doing it. Many times, doctor's office staff, they don't understand the importance of giving our family members that are deaf access to language, because we as parents, we don't make that effort. We don't see the importance for our children to have this access. I had to work very hard. I knew that AJ looked different in the medical arena, but I had to make sure that AJ was seen as a human being with dignity first. And that was part of getting him access to his language and have it not come from me, so that I can be mom and he can have somebody else that he can communicate other than just mom. We had to fight for services. That picture on the left side where AJ is in a rear walker, AJ was told he would never sit, never stand, never walk. I have that picture up there because we had to work so hard to get AJ into physical therapy. I was told multiple times after assessments that AJ didn't qualify for physical therapy at the time because he couldn't even sit down. So why are we working on X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, no, we're going to work on it. So I had to push for him to have therapy sessions. And that day in that particular picture was the first time AJ was 4.5 years old, and he let go of that walker and he just started walking. We were at a park, we were at a walkathon raising funds for congenital heart disease, and he took off. And of course, I was mom, I didn't have the phone to video record that. But this is a picture, an image in my mind that I will never forget, because I saw my son doing what he was not supposed to be doing per the doctor's instructions. He was not supposed to sit. He was not supposed to stand. He was not supposed to walk. So why limit him? Why not give him access to everything? It wasn't until AJ was almost 5 years old when I started giving him access to an interpreter at a medical facility, because I didn't know that I could place these requests. I thought I had to be that communication person for AJ. The next picture where you see AJ with hearing aids, traditional hearing aids on the left side, and on the right side, he has the Baja. Once I understood that AJ needed bone conductive hearing aids in the previous slide, I advocated for him to get those bone conductive hearing aids. Kind of funny story. His insurance didn't want to cover the bone conductive hearing aids. We went between private insurance, Medi-Cal, CCS, nobody wanted to cover them. I finally got the insurance to approve the coverage of the bone conductive hearing aids. And then the middle person didn't know how to bill for them. So the middle person company was somewhere in La Puente area, West Covina area. And I was driven to get him those bone conductive hearing aids. I couldn't afford them. We were looking at about $15,000, and I couldn't afford bilateral bone conductive hearing aids. But I feel kind of bad saying this, but I kind of had to threaten the owner. I found who the owner, where the owner was. I found where his place of business was, and I kind of had to threaten him for about a week. And it came to a day that I said, look, if you can't figure out how to bill for these bone conductive hearing aids, that you need to call this person at the insurance. This is a case manager I've been working with. I had to give them detailed things on how and what to do. And I said, but if they're not approved by Friday, because I know then you have to place an order. If they're not approved for Friday, I am going to go to your place of business on Monday morning. I'm going to sit there and I will not move from your parking lot until you give my son access to this device that he needs to be able to hear. And that's a type of the determination that we need to have in the medical field for our kids. I had to fight for AJ to be seen by a feeding therapist. I had to fight for my son to, okay, I'm coming into the OR with breathing issues with him. I'm on my 6th visit to the ER. And I have oxygen at home now, but give me a pulse ox monitor so I know where he's at. Why am I coming to the emergency room just for you to deep suction my son? Why don't you teach me how to do this at home? So I had to advocate for him constantly until he got the medical equipment that he needed. And this picture on the left, where you see AJ's and his ASL interpreter, Doug, is one of the most amazing interpreters that we've used at Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. But Doug was, how do I put it, was a lifeline for AJ. AJ had to go in for a second pacemaker, and before having ASL access in the medical arena, AJ was so hard for us to even take his blood pressure. It was so hard for doctors to be able to do an EKG. I had to hold him down most of the time. And once I started advocating for person live interpreters to be there physically for AJ, doctor visits were so easy. AJ listens better, like most of our kids listen better to other adults that speak their language other than mom. So if your baby is 6 months and he has a hearing loss, get him an interpreter. If your baby's 2 years and he has a hearing loss, get him an interpreter when he's at the doctor's office. It's never too early to give our children full access to language. Going into the other image, there's an image of AJ and education. AJ was not given access to language, as some of our kids are not early on. Unfortunately, we had a battle with the school district to get him an interpreter in middle school. The last 2 years of elementary school, AJ was in a deaf and hard of hearing classroom where ASL was embedded, and he was doing great progress. But once that program ended for middle school, we had to make sure to get him access in the school site. And in all areas that are pertaining to school, whether it's after school programs, whether there's a dance, whether there is a rally, whatever's going on, we need to advocate for our children's access to education, and they are protected by the Individuals with Disability Educational Act. If I can say something about this is, in the next page, education advocacy doesn't come easy. When AJ was going to start preschool, when he was finally going to start preschool, I thought it was going to be easy. I said, I've been fighting for medical equipment for him. I've been fighting for him to see a specific specialist. I've been fighting for ASL interpreters at the doctor's office. But never did I imagine I would have to be fighting and advocating for him at school. In the advocacy efforts, remember to make an effort to collaborate with your IEP team, take advice and listen to the suggestions, but do not let anybody tell you what's best for your child, because we know our children best. We truly do know our children best. Don't take no for an answer. I wish I would have not taken no for an answer early on when AJ was younger. When it came to access to education and visual access as well. When it came to getting him a mobility specialist, I was told he didn't need one. And it wasn't until the end of elementary school that he got one. This picture here of AJ with these group of kids, these are all hearing kids. I love that picture of him because I had come to the school site one day, and I had no idea that AJ had friends. You know, he wasn't sharing that with me, but he had typical hearing friends that communicated with him through the interpreter or communicated with him through his one-on-one nurse. And I went on this field trip with AJ. AJ must have been in 3rd grade here. And we had just gone to the bathroom, AJ and I. They didn't know I was mom. They thought I was a nurse because I was acting as a nurse that day. And the kids call me over and they're like, can you please take a picture of us and AJ? We want a picture with AJ. And I was like, okay, I'll take a picture. And to my surprise, my son was the only deaf son in that school, but he was so involved with his typical peers. They were an amazing group of kids. And I love sharing this picture because this is what it's supposed to look like. We're not supposed to have our kids with special needs segregated from other children. But we need to not take no for an answer. I had to fight early on for AJ to be invited to every grade class field trip. Because in kindergarten, he was not given an opportunity to a field trip. And the response from the principal and the teacher were, well, we didn't know you wanted him to go on this field trip. So even little things like that, we have to be on top of it because it doesn't just benefit our children to be involved with typical peers, but it benefits typical peers to learn how to spend time, play with a child that is deaf and has other disabilities. Don't limit your child's abilities due to others' expectations. Be appropriately ambitious with what you want or what you know your child is capable of doing. There's things that I had to come to recognize that my son can't do. Or my son is not even interested in this. It is his life, not my life. We need to be ambitious with what goals we want them to accomplish. We don't want to limit them, but we also need to understand that there's certain things that a child who is deafblind cannot do. Your child should have access. I mentioned the field trips. Your child should have access to the library, to events before and after school. They should have access, not just physical access, but communication access, language access to picking his own electives. Some of our kids that are more, they have more intense needs, like my son AJ, they're typically told what electives they need to be on, what electives they can take, what's available pertaining on what the schedule of his special education class looks like. And so they end up giving them what they want. AJ currently is in an ASL elective class. He is in an art class, and he does unified sports as PE. And this is a picture of him from a few weeks ago. He was doing football. And, you know, this mom just can't stay on the bleachers. Although he has a one-on-one aide and he has an interpreter, this mom just could not stay on the bleachers. I was watching my son struggle a bit with not being able to participate in the sports. So I took myself down there and I said, I'm gonna work with him if you don't mind. And he was able to do so much more because I knew where to push him. I knew visually how he can access things, and he has a new team this year. AJ has a new team. He for high school, he goes to a new district because our previous district only went K-8. So it's a learning curve for them. And so you need to be able to collaborate with your team. But the foremost thing is AJ has to have access to ASL interpreters anything that is going to help facilitate effective communication for him. So if you've not started down that path, or you think, my son hears, or he can hear aided. And that's something I want to point out. If you notice in this picture here, AJ's in high school. He's not wearing traditional hearing aids. He's not wearing any bone conductive hearing aids. I mentioned earlier that I think because we have very loud 5-year-old twin boys, AJ has decided on his own that he no longer wants to have auditory input. And I had to learn how to respect that. AJ wore traditional hearing aids for 3 years. It gave him no access to hearing much. Then we went from 3 years old to 13 years old with bone conductive hearing aids that helped him hear at a 45 to 50 decibel. He was getting auditory input. But it came a point when he decided that auditory input he no longer wanted. And even though everybody at school were telling me he has to wear his bone conductive hearing aids, doctors were telling me he has to wear his bone conductive hearing aids. I was the mom who used to walk with an FM system microphone so that it would Bluetooth to his devices and he would hear. And if somebody was going to speak to him, and if he was in a Sunday school class, I would give that mic to the teacher, and I would make sure that whoever is speaking to him verbally is using that microphone so he can hear. But I had to understand at 13 years old that my son had decided he no longer wanted to be aided. And that was really hard for me. But that was his choice. So we need to give our children the choice to decide what they want and what they don't want. The next picture, the next slide, I just want to share with you a little bit of our story. I mentioned to you that George, my husband, his name is Jorge, but he goes by George. He wanted, a pro baseball player. Well, we got one. It might not look the same like what we envisioned, but AJ at the age of 6 years old started becoming involved in our local special needs baseball team. AJ feels like this is his community. There is no other deaf or hard of hearing kids on the baseball field. There's actually one other kid with Charge syndrome on the baseball field, but his particular needs when it comes to access to communication looks very different than what it is for AJ. As I mentioned, deaf blindness can be seen as a spectrum where some kids have more hearing or less hearing. Some kids have more visual access than others. And AJ's pretty impacted visually. But he is part of this community. The older boy in the bottom middle picture, that's actually one of the brothers of another kid with special needs on the league. And I love, I wish I would have put the video. I couldn't figure out how to put a video, but that top right picture, it says dance off. And I have a little quotation where AJ says, yeah, this coach and AJ were on the field literally doing a dance off. And this is the type of things that we do for our son so that he can have a good social life in the community. And we don't necessarily have other people that are signers in our community. It doesn't come very easily in the area that we live. But that's what, we are there for. We are there to build that bridge with communication. But first of all, we're there by having our kids out in the community. When I moved to this area 13 years ago, 12 years ago, AJ was 3. I live in the Lake Elsinore Menifee community area. I went to church one day and I had an older man who would just stare at me and my son. It was kind of annoying how much he stared at us, but I ignored it. He finally came up to me one day and said, I don't understand, but I admire you for bringing your son with you everywhere you go. I've been watching you for a while. If you come to church, you bring him with you. If you come to Bible study, you bring him with you. If we have a outreach community event, he's there with you. You take him everywhere. And I didn't understand that, you know, for me, that was normal. This man, about 12 years ago, he was about 55. And as we all know, you know, a few years ago, our kids with special needs or kids that were deaf, you know, they were not involved in our community. So quickly in the area that I live in, I found out that it wasn't the norm. But thank God that 12 years later, we even have a special needs baseball team in the area. We actually have 3 in my area. So I'm really excited about that. The next slide, I just want to share with you a little bit about AJ's busy social life. We take AJ to Disneyland a lot. It's one of the places that has the best availability to access with American Sign Language. Whether it's a show that we're watching, if we request it in time, we'll get somebody to go on rides with us. And anyhow, we ended up doing a Disney cruise with him. If you are a person that is deaf or hard of hearing, the Disney Cruise Line is amazing about ASL interpreters. Here we have AJ at church. He did a youth conference and we had a one-on-one interpreter just for him, as well as AJ hitting this big drum there with California DeafBlind Services when he was younger. And get your child out in the community. The bottom right image is an ice cream shop that is about 30 minutes away from our house. AJ likes ice cream, so I started taking him there. And I asked the owner one day, hey, can we go to the back and learn how to make ice cream? Can AJ learn how to make ice cream? And we built a really good relationship with this owner, and where AJ is able, you know, he's been back there about 5 times learning how to make ice cream, picking different flavors on how to make ice cream. And these are all things that AJ needs access to, like all of our kids. I have an image on the top of birthday videos in ASL for AJ. We have a really good community here with special needs. And I reached out to some of our community friends and I said, hey, can you record a video? AJ's birthday is coming up. And this was specifically during COVID. The next slide talks about diversity as having a seat at the table, inclusion as having a voice, and belonging as having that voice be heard. Part of my grieving with a son with a hearing loss was that I know he looked different, but I knew he would have a seat at the table. But when it came to inclusion, would he have a voice? I didn't know what that was going to look like for him. And even if he had a voice, would he belong? And would his voice be heard? So slowly, I had to learn ASL. I had to be the first person in my family to be able to communicate with my son, because I was with my son. I quit my job and I dedicated myself to working with my child. I didn't have time for classes with ASL, but I needed to make sure that my son would be included, that he would have a voice be heard, and that he would have a community where he could belong with. So I started watching YouTube videos. I started watching, I couldn't do any of the deaf events in Riverside County, because I am in Riverside County because of my sons with special needs. But I started watching everything and anything that I could online that would teach me some ASL. I started watching a lot of signing time, which later on I didn't like very much because they spoke too much and didn't sign enough, but I learned a lot from signing time videos. I started using captions. I have captions on my TV constantly. I didn't make it large enough. I have to make sure if AJ's not telling me that, if he can see the captions or not, you know, I'm gonna enlarge them as big as possible. I started embedding all those things so that it became normal and natural in AJ's environment. Let's go to the next slide. I was talking about having a community when I said that I had some friends in now friends in this area that made a video for AJ and said happy birthday for him. It is so important that you find your tribe. Find those that get you. Your tribe will be your family, because unfortunately for some of us, our family members, our extended family, are not involved in our children's day in, day out. AJ is 15 years old, and he has but one distant cousin that has learned ASL, who now wants to be a speech pathologist, specifically in ASL. But AJ comes from a family. On my side of the family, there's about 65 first cousins that I have. It's a huge Hispanic family. On my husband's side of the family, it is not any different. And out of both sides of our family, there is only one cousin interested in ASL. So sometimes our immediate families, our extended families, are not going to be those people that are in our lives day in, day out, communicating with their children. So you need to find your community. I quickly, by the time AJ was 3, connected with the Charge Syndrome Foundation. We used to do meetups in our area. If there was a birthday, we're always inviting each other to birthday parties with our Charge families. In our immediate community, I met these wonderful women. I actually met Kristen through a Bible study meet. And it's so important that you find who your tribe is and those that get you, so that you can support each other in times of need. The next image, again, is your tribe is your greatest blessing. There's no way I could do life by myself with my kids and husband if I didn't have a support group in my area. We used to do a lot of walkathons with AJ for congenital heart disease. That is our actual family in that picture with the heart. Grandpa is on the top with AJ. Grandpa's 82 years old. He is hard of hearing himself, but he is one of AJ's biggest supporters. We have on the bottom corner, California DeafBlind's family support provider group that we took a couple years ago, just getting involved with other parents that they might not have kids with Charge syndrome, but they have kids with or loved ones who are deafblind, and just making sure your kids are out there because they deserve access to other people. And when you find your tribe, that tribe will be the biggest blessing, not just for yourself, but for your loved one with a disability. The next slide, I just want to share, AJ's journey constantly continues. His journey has only begun. In the middle of all the medical, educational, and social opportunities, we are aware that we must continue to fight for communication, for access to that communication. We are aware that we must continue to advocate for access to language for AJ because he relies on us to protect his rights to ASL. I was just on the phone yesterday again for like the 4th time this week with his GI clinic because AJ has an appointment coming up next week. And I have to make sure that he's going to have an in-person ASL interpreter available for him. They have video ASL interpreters available, but that doesn't necessarily work for my son who is deafblind. So for the 4th time this week, I cannot get tired. I had to call and talk to the manager and make sure the request was put in, see where we're at with that request. And I'm becoming best friends with this GI manager because I need her help to help me give access to AJ. We do get tired. It is so tiring sometimes, but AJ has taught us resilience and courage. This kid has not given up on life, so I can't give up on life. AJ is counting on us, and our deafblind children, our DeafPlus children are counting on you to make access happen for them. It's okay if you get tired. It's okay if we grieve. It's okay. It's part of life. We're humans and we feel. It's okay to also be immensely proud of your child just where they are in that moment. They might not look like the other children's progresses that they're making. Your child might be making more progress, might be making less progress than the other deafblind child or than the other special needs child in his class, but be proud for where they're at. AJ went to school for a whole week a couple of months ago, for the whole week. 5 days, the entire day. I celebrated that week because I have a son with other disabilities and things that impact his life that don't always allow him to be at school every single day. So Friday came around and I was happy I was having a happy dance. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about, but we made it through Friday. He went to school Monday through Friday. Yay. It's something to celebrate. With AJ, we have learned to live in the moment because we don't know what tomorrow holds. I had AJ on oxygen. He's typically not on oxygen. He's typically in room air, but he got some type of a cold 2 weeks ago. And I had him here on oxygen for 8 days. It was exhausting. And, you know, we don't know when our kids are gonna continue. So it was very crucial. It's very crucial for me. And I've learned that I just need to celebrate every single moment of his life. And the last slide, just to say thank you. Alongside with AJ, we have had a journey full of laughter. We have had a journey full of tears, a journey full of happiness, a journey full of sadness as well, a journey of a journey of being still and nothing happening, and also a journey of a lot of action. But most of all, we have had a journey full of unconditional love that has been felt and that has been heard. I had to learn how to bond with my son in a manner that he can bond back with me. And that has been our journey thus far. Just thank you for the opportunity to share our journey with AJ.